Happy NFL kickoff, everybody. Today, it's time to have some fun and take my best shot at trying to predict how this season is going to play out. As most of you know, throughout the course of the summer, I've been producing my deep dive series with 2+ hours of analysis on every team, breaking down their strengths, weaknesses, what could go right or wrong. And while I do reveal those teams throughout the series in the order of my power rankings, those rankings are much more how I view those teams today as we head into week 1, and not necessarily how I'm predicting that those teams will finish the season. So that is what today's video is all about, is having some fun and planting my flag a little bit more, taking my best swing at trying to predict how this entire season is going to play out. And today we're going to do record predictions for all 32 teams. We're going to do my preseason awards show, giving out all of the key awards for the NFL. I will show the full playoff predictions. And then I'm even going to get into some hot takes as well as my predictions here for these first 2 NFL games. So we've got a lot to get into here today. Before we do, just make sure you are subscribed here as we get into the start of the regular season. You're not going to want to miss my regular season content, everything from weekly power rankings to positional tier makers and so much more. But with that, let's get into my standings predictions for the 2025 NFL season. We will start in the NFC North. And again, we have done 2+ hours of analysis on every team other than the Ravens. Ravens fans, I got you. That deep dive is coming as soon as possible here. But we're going with more snapshot analysis here for this video. If you want deeper thoughts on anything regarding these teams, all of these deep dives are timestamped. You can go find exactly what it is you want to hear my thoughts on. But let's get into it at the bottom of the NFC North, with the hardest team to predict this season, the Minnesota Vikings, the biggest variable being J.J. McCarthy. Just so hard to know how good he's going to be. If he's pretty dang good, which I think is possible, the Vikings are going to be excellent this year. I think most likely scenario here is he's pretty solid, but you're going to get some ups and downs throughout the course of the season, and the Vikings hover around 500. I have them going 8-9 this season. Then in third place, the Chicago Bears. Don't scoff at the third place there. That is 10-7, and spoiler alert, I do have the Bears getting a playoff spot this year. I buy what is going on with that coaching staff, Caleb Williams, and those playmakers. At second place in the NFC North, the Green Bay Packers. Since they acquired Micah Parsons, they have actually become the betting favorite to win the NFC North. That's pretty aggressive for me considering what Detroit has shown, but I do think Green Bay has a lot of success this year. That Parsons trade will help them get set over the edge, pun intended, and get into double-digit wins this season and secure a playoff berth. Then we have the Detroit Lions at 12-5, getting first place in the NFC North. I do think the offense takes a slight step back with losses on the interior of the offensive line and no more Ben Johnson, but I think the additions on the defensive side of the ball should be able to more than compensate for that, even if they're not winning 15 games like they did last season. All right, NFC East. In fourth place, I do have the New York Giants, and honestly, I wish I could have them with more wins. They drew the most unfortunate schedule I can maybe ever remember since I've been doing these predictions, and I do go game by game to come out with these records, and it just was really hard week in, week out to pick the Giants to beat the teams they were matched up against. So I have them going 6-11, and we'll just have to wait and see what that might mean for Brian Daboll and his future with this team. But then I have the Dallas Cowboys in third place at 8-9. I do think this team's going to be fun to watch this year, despite the overwhelming dread that surrounds this team's season following the Micah Parsons trade. But look out for Dak, CeeDee Lamb, and George Pickens to really create some fireworks, maybe as early as tonight's game. But I think that offense should be explosive and allow them to win a decent amount of games. I've got Dallas at 8-9. But then in second place, I do have the Washington Commanders here, and I have them going 9-8. In July, when I made their deep dive, I thought I was being sneaky when I pinned them as a likely regression candidate. But that does seem to be where most people are going with this team, is not pushing them forward too far. I think a lot of people have PTSD about what happened with the Texans last year. And I do see a lot of similarities where a team was a little bit ahead of the curve, might be due for some regression back to the mean unless they can hit a lot of green lights with their roster. It really is not a reflection of Jaden Daniels, though. I think he's spectacular. It's more about the defense and the playmakers that I'm worried about outside of Terry McLaurin. Then we have the Philadelphia Eagles in first place. Not a big surprise there. Just dropped their deep dive yesterday. And go check it out. This roster is more loaded than my belly will be here in a few hours watching them play football and kick off the season. Then the NFC South in fourth place, and not just that, but the worst record in the league for me, the New Orleans Saints at 2-15. I'm expecting a miserable season from this Saints team. And was there a more disappointed fan base than Saints fans to see what Arch Manning looked like against Ohio State just a week ago? Maybe not. Then in third place, the team that I really do want to believe in, but don't quite have the spine to back it up in these predictions, with the Carolina Panthers going 6-11. I think the offense will have a lot of success, but as I was picking every single game for the Panthers, it's like, man, do I really have faith in this defense to slow anybody down? And do I think Bryce Young is ready to get this team into playoff contention, scoring 30-plus points every week? It's a lot to ask for these Panthers, though I think they're going to be a ton of fun to watch and are absolutely heading in the right direction. And then the Atlanta Falcons, just above them at 7-10. They're honestly a reflection of their division rival there in Carolina. I think these could be the two worst defenses in the entire National Football League, and a couple of young quarterbacks trying to find their way through that. So I have the Falcons at 7-10, and probably seeing a new head coach next season. Then we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in first place at 10-7. Going to be interesting to see them navigate some injuries to start the season with Tristan Wirfs and Chris Godwin. Might be a slower start for Tampa, but I think they can settle back down and win this division. Then we have the NFC West, a difficult division to predict. But in fourth place, I do have the Seattle Seahawks. And Seahawks fans and myself have had at it throughout the course of this offseason. They were not happy with my ranking of them in the power rankings. And I can't blame you, but I'm just not a huge believer in the Sam Darnold experience here behind a shaky offensive line and a group of playmakers that's talented but a little bit congested. Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith and Jigba, kind of a redundant, slower skill set. I just don't know if that's going to mesh well necessarily with Sam Darnold and the offensive line. I am excited to see this defense that, if they can get enough offensive support, could be one of the best in the league. So Seattle's sneaky and could certainly make me look wrong here, but I have them at 8-9. And then just above them, the Arizona Cardinals at 9-8. This is a sneaky team that is a candidate to be one of the surprise teams of the year. I think their defense is a prime candidate to be the most improved unit in the NFL. But can Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison put it all together to get this team into the playoffs? I think it's going to be pretty close for them here with a 9-8 record prediction. Then the Rams in second place at 10-7. This is kind of similar to Minnesota, honestly, in that this is a very hard team to predict. I don't think anybody, maybe even Rams fans, have a ton of confidence that Matthew Stafford will get through the season. And that obviously just is the most polarizing thing you could imagine, right? If they have Matthew Stafford, the Rams are a Super Bowl contender. If he is missing, do I see that with Jimmy Garoppolo here? They're still a competitive team with Jimmy Garoppolo, don't get me wrong, but they do come down a notch. And then even if Matthew Stafford is out there, how healthy is he going through this back injury at his age? So this is a tough one. I'm going to play the optimist there and say Stafford can battle through this and the Rams have a successful 10-7 season and get into the dance. But in first place, the San Francisco 49ers, who I do like. I'm a huge believer in Kyle Shanahan. Obviously, they themselves are tough to predict because so much of their roster base is injury, related stuff. But I will say, when you go through the NFL playoff predictor machine and you go week to week to week, there's not an easier schedule in the league, I think, than what the Niners have, and it's pretty easy to look at their opponents and see a double-digit win season for them as long as they are remotely healthy. So there is your NFC. I will reveal all of the playoff seedings once we go through the AFC here. So let's go to the AFC North. In fourth place, no surprise here, the Cleveland Browns. I think they're due for a long season. I do love their defensive roster talent, but I do think there's going to be certain weeks where Cleveland is tough and scrappy, kind of just like last year. But really, Joe Flacco is the week one option here in Cleveland. It just is really hard to emerge from this offseason with a lot of hype and expectations for this Browns team. But then in third place, the Pittsburgh Steelers, but I do have them going 10-7. I do think the Aaron Rodgers experience here is going to go relatively well. I think he's kind of saying a lot of the right things, seems focused on just playing football, staying out of the headlines, trying to kind of go out on top, so to speak. Maybe not as a Super Bowl contender, but at least play some good ball on a competitive double-digit win team here that does have a lot of talent on it. So the Steelers are a sneaky team this year and a polarizing one for sure. I know I got burned by Aaron Rodgers and the Jets last year, but I'm not too scared to buy in a much better culture and organization here with the Steelers. But I do have in second place the Cincinnati Bengals, also going 10-7, have a chance to be the best offense in the league. I think as far as this offseason, getting Trey Hendrickson back, hopefully Al Golden can straighten this defense out a little bit. They don't need, even a top 26 defense. They just need a top 29 defense and not be a historically bad one like they were last year, and get off to a better start too. The NFL threw you Cleveland this year. They threw you the Patriots last year. If they would have just won that week one game that they were a double-digit favorite in, they would have made the playoffs. So honestly, week one's a big one for the Bengals to take care of those fourth place Cleveland Browns here in a couple of days. But then in first place, the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens fans, looking forward to seeing you here for their deep dive, but there are so many expectations for this team. Love this secondary, love the way Lamar is playing right now. How could you not? So I have them taking first place at 12-5. Then the AFC East at the bottom, the New York Jets. They just lost Elijah Vera Tucker here for the season, just before the season starts. The pain just does not go away for Jets fans. I'm excited to see what this defense is going to look like, but this might be the worst offense in the league. I'm not really about to buy into the Justin Fields experience here. Run game should be pretty good. Garrett Wilson's going to see 1 million targets here, but expecting a transition season for the Jets, not a Cinderella season. The Miami Dolphins coming in third place here. Another team kind of in a weird spot. I don't know that anybody's really picking Miami right now. They are sneaky. Like if Tua can stay healthy and Tyreek really is kind of back to what he was just a year ago, Miami's probably going to be better than this 6-11 record, but it's a porous roster. I don't trust the offensive line. I feel like teams have kind of caught on to what Tua and Mike McDaniel are trying to do offensively, and we need to see them come up with a new pivot, schematically speaking. So yeah, I kind of played it down the middle there, 6-11 for the Dolphins. And then I do have the New England Patriots at 7-10. I'm buying into the Drake May experience and Mike Vrabel as a great head coach hire, but it is still a very lackluster roster with a lot of pieces to figure out. I don't think this is going to be, again, I'll use that term, a Cinderella season for the Patriots, but they do have a pretty easy schedule and wouldn't be as stunned if they were an 8-9 team that threatened a playoff wildcard spot. But I've got them at 7 wins, which I think would be considered a successful first season here, as long as Drake May looks good as a part of this. And then the Buffalo Bills, with a 13-win season, capitalizing on having the easiest schedule probably in the NFL, and they are the most favored team to win their own division in the league for good reason. So not going to get too crazy there. A 13-4 record for Buffalo. Then we have the AFC South. In fourth place, I have the Tennessee Titans at 5-12. If anybody in the league is going to really surprise and kind of be this year's Washington Commanders, if you will, it's probably Tennessee if Cam Ward just really is that good. We can't take that for granted, though, and we must remember that most rookie quarterbacks are rookie quarterbacks, and this is probably about the season you can expect in a most likely situation for Tennessee. Jacksonville at 5-12. They're sneaky for sure. This is more of just a gut feeling and a, personal vibes check that I don't think Jacksonville's going to blow anybody away this year. I think they're going to do some soul searching and find some things to build around for us to maybe have some more hype for the Liam Cohen experience in 2026, and maybe to feel a little bit better that Trevor Lawrence is the dude, but just don't love the offensive line, don't love the defense, frankly. 5-12 might be a little bit harsh here, but I hope they prove me wrong. And then the Indianapolis Colts. I do think this is probably the most underrated team in the league because they are not exciting heading into the year with Daniel Jones as their starter. But we've seen this Colts team with the likes of Gardner Minshew, Joe Flacco, and Anthony Richardson, who is still a part of this equation. We've seen these teams go 9-8, 8-9, and threaten the playoffs in even worse years. I think the defense is poised to be way better than it's been. And they have, honestly, a pretty awesome offensive roster around the quarterback. So 8-9 isn't going to blow the doors off for anybody, but I do think this is going to be a pretty damn tough team that is in the mix by season's end. But I do have the Houston Texans winning this division. I love this defense. They're going to have some really tough individual matchups out there because of how shaky their offensive line is. So they're probably going to lose some games against teams that have great pass rushes, even if those aren't the best teams. But as long as they can protect CJ Stroud and get after it with this defense, they're going to be able to win a lot of games this year, in my opinion. Then we have the AFC West with the Raiders in fourth place. I really like this Raiders team this year. I would have liked them even more if they were going to have Christian Wilkins there as the Robin to Max Crosby's Batman. That is just enough for me to not go far enough to kind of have this team as a playoff sleeper, but I do think they're going to be close. I wish their schedule was a little bit easier and they were in an easier division, but there might not be a more improved team in the NFL when you look at coach, quarterback, going from the worst running back room to one of the best, hopefully with Ashton Ginty. This team's going to suck to play against. I do believe that. And I see them as kind of the spoiler team for the NFL this year, where they're going to have some pretty sneaky upsets this year, in my opinion. But then we have the Chargers in third place at 9-8. Man, that Rashawn Slater injury is just so massive, right? I think this team could take a step back. I know they played well on defense last year, but I look at that defensive roster, and man, it is still one of the worst in the league. The D-line, frankly, got worse. I don't love that. I know Christian Fulton isn't a big name, but he played well in that secondary. I have a hard time getting excited about the upside of this Chargers team, but certainly they're going to be in the mix. I have them with a winning record at 9-8. But I do have the Denver Broncos at 10-7. They are going to get a playoff spot again here this year. This defense is excellent at all three levels. Bo Nix, I think, does get dismissed by a lot of people as someone that, probably in the back of a lot of people's minds, they don't view him as kind of a playoff caliber quarterback. I think Bo Nix really takes that step forward to solidify himself as at least a good tier 3 quarterback with the likes of guys like Brock Purdy, Jalen Hurts. Maybe not the most flashy guy, but I like what we've seen there. I like the additions with the playmakers. I think Evan Ingram has a big year here. I like Denver this year, I do. But I do have Kansas City still holding on to first place in this division, but just an 11-6 season. Maybe not the same close game luck for the Chiefs. I have this division a lot closer for comfort than Chiefs fans would like. Obviously, a lot of chalk here. I mean, I think that's 7 out of 8 division favorites, which the only non-favorite is technically Detroit right now. And that's just pretty normal, I think. Like, these are my sort of gun to your head predictions. Like, how do you most likely see things playing out? Obviously, injuries are going to happen. There's going to be surprise breakouts. Predicting the NFL is so hard. This is just my best shot at a most likely prediction for this season. I will spoil, though, once we get through the awards and the playoff predictions here, I'm going to do some more hot take predictions. Ones that I didn't quite have the spine to put in here, but things that, might be a little bit more likely to surprise here from this season. But let's do our awards. One of my favorite parts of this show. So for MVP, just by looking at my standings predictions, so often the quarterback of the most winningest team is going to be the prime candidate for the MVP. And when that guy is Josh Allen, it's just hard for me to pick against him again, especially when I look at that team and they just don't have the exciting playmaking talent that will kind of get held against a guy like Josh Allen. I think he won the MVP last year because you look at what he does with his legs, how efficient he was in that offense when his best wide receiver is Khalil Shakir. I think that matters. So I am going to just go slightly with Josh Allen there, but I am doing honorable mentions this year, and got to think Lamar Jackson in a 12-win season or so is going to be right there. And then in this scenario where the Bengals did make the playoffs, Joe Burrow, absolutely. If you want to talk about voter fatigue and, the voters for the MVP trying to kind of share the love there, as they clearly did this year, kind of going, okay, Lamar, you're first team All-Pro, but Josh Allen, you're MVP. I do think they think like that. Joe Burrow, if he can, outproduce Josh Allen and Lamar and get this team to the playoffs, very well could be him too. So I know that's pretty chalky to go with those top three QBs, but it's kind of hard to go against one of the elite QBs in the NFL for this award. And at the end of the day, I'm just trying to be right. Now, for Offensive Player of the Year, this one's not quite as chalk. I think he's the sixth most likely or highest odds to win this award. I went with Jahmyr Gibbs out of Detroit. Every year we do see the running back crown get passed. There's no real reason to believe that Saquon won't have a monster season, but it's just kind of the way the position works. Guys get banged up, blocking changes, like it just, historically speaking, that's how it goes. And if Jahmyr Gibbs is the most productive running back in the NFL, and something we talked about in the Detroit Lions deep dive with the change of offensive coordinator, if there was one thing that Ben Johnson maybe didn't fully unlock, I think it was using Jahmyr Gibbs as sort of that Christian McCaffrey-esque receiving threat. Well, John Morton comes over with an extensive history of working with Sean Payton, who obviously has done that in the past with guys like Darren Sproles and Alvin Kamara. I could see a little bit more usage from Jahmyr Gibbs even in the receiving game than he's done before. We know he can handle it. It's just, can they turn that dial up? If we're talking about a 1,000 yard season for Jahmyr Gibbs, I like his chances for Offensive Player of the Year. And then for my honorable mentions, yeah, you're going to have your usual suspects, especially like Jamar Chase. Yeah, I could give him an honorable mention. He's going to be the favorite for this award for a reason. But there's a couple guys that if their teams do have good seasons, and I'm not so stubborn to just be like, oh yeah, I'm for sure right about the Falcons, I'm for sure right about the Jets, who I didn't have having the biggest of seasons. Drake London and Garrett Wilson are going to get fed so many targets this year. I think these two guys probably lead the NFL in targets, in my opinion, and they're both exceptional football players. Two guys that I could see generating some buzz, maybe not to win this award necessarily, but maybe they can. I don't know. Defensive Player of the Year. This one's also not super chalky. I went with Jalen Carter for the Eagles. I do think the narrative is building for him. He's gotten better in each of his two seasons out the gate coming out of Georgia. You look at that Eagles defense, and I do think if it can roll like it did in the second half of last year and be the staple, number one elite defense in the league, which it has potential to be, the best player on that team and the guy that's going to make that hum is Jalen Carter, who, if he takes another leap, is probably talking about an 80 pressure, 90 pressure, double-digit sack season. Could see Jalen Carter getting this award. The other honorable mention has to be the favorite, Micah Parsons. You know that narrative is going to be there. If the Packers defense plays like a top 4, top 5 unit, Parsons has 18, 19 sacks like we know he's capable of. He's also going to be in a position to win this award. But we are going with a Packer for my Offensive Rookie of the Year, someone that nobody seems to want to talk about, and that is Matthew Golden. By the way, if anybody still has a fantasy draft like tonight before the game starts, or if you're still doing best ball drafts on Underdog Fantasy, for example, there might not be a bigger value in the league right now than Matthew Golden, who I think is just severely underrated, having fallen into the 20s of the draft. He is going to be Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers' number one wide receiver. This is a Stephon Diggs-esque talent, in my opinion, that could hit in his rookie season. Jaden Reed is dealing with a scary foot injury, frankly. Romeo Doubs is not reliable. Christian Watson probably won't be back till mid to late season, and even then, will he stay on the field? I see a potential 1,100, 1,200 yard, maybe even double-digit touchdown season for Matthew Golden. If that happens, I think that's actually going to be enough to surpass Ashton Jeanty, that I think will have a lot of volume, but probably going to be looking at like a 3.9, 4.0 yards per attempt type of deal. He's obviously going to be the favorite to win this award, and that's why he's the honorable mention. But I think if a receiver can put up equally impressive numbers, the voters will go that way. especially if it's on a better football team, in this case with Matthew Golden. And by the way, speaking of values like Matthew Golden, if you've ever heard people like myself and others talking about underdogs, pick'em contests, and you've thought about signing up there yourself, now is the time to do that. They have a free Saquon Barkley pick there for their pick'em contest where you pick higher or lowers, string together your lineups with the chance at massive payouts. Underdog is a ton of fun. It's a great way to win some money and increase your interest in any given football game like tonight's matchup between the Eagles and Cowboys. Right now, if you sign up using code TFG, you will get a bonus match, $50 of bonus play back when you play just $5 of Pick'em contest. That's code TFG at Underdog Fantasy. But back to the awards. Defensive Rookie of the Year, I am going to go chalk here, Abdul Carter. It's just hard to really find anybody of the same likelihood to win this award than Carter on that stacked defensive line. I think he's going to get a lot of sack production. This one's pretty easy, but there is an honorable mention here for sure, and that is Jahdae Barron. If the Broncos defense is really good, Jahdae Barron could have an opportunity to have one of those types of seasons where defensive backs just find a lot of interception opportunities because of their surrounding situation. And I do think Jahdae Barron, even though I was a little bit lower on him as a prospect overall, I do think he couldn't have landed in a better spot in Denver to plug in as their slot guy. And I did see him as a true slot corner, not an outside corner. So I love that he's going to get to do that. If he has a 7 or 8 interception season as the premium ball hawk of that secondary, he's going to have a good chance to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Coach of the Year, I'm also going with the favorite here as well, Ben Johnson. If I'm following my standings predictions here as the most likely outcome for this season, that award's going to go to the most surprising, probably playoff team. And to me in this scenario would be the Bears and Ben Johnson in his rookie year. Pretty simple pick there, honestly. But an honorable mention for me, as maybe a teaser for my hot takes section, would be Dave Canales. If the Panthers can maybe not even go to the playoffs, but if the Panthers can really turn this thing around, go 9-8 this season, the job Dave Canales has done there might get rewarded, especially if there isn't another prime candidate of that light with sort of the surprise teams. And then comeback player of the year, I'm going with Aiden Hutchinson here. He is the favorite, but it just makes so much sense. I think Detroit is still going to be awesome this year, and I think they're going to be, I think that defense is going to be a bigger part of their awesomeness, for lack of a better term. So he's a pretty simple pick there for comeback player of the year, but one honorable mention that's a little bit sneaky is Nick Chubb for the Texans. I do think the Texans are going to be a really good football team, and this Joe Mixon injury situation is just ramping up. We talked about it in their deep dive a month ago, and it's only gotten worse since then. Look, if Nick Chubb, has a Adrian Peterson-esque recovery, I'm not saying Nick Chubb's going to go win the MVP, but if he can get his body back somewhat close to old form and they can revive him, kind of similar to what Joe Mixon did in Houston last year. Like, I thought Joe Mixon was losing a step when he went to Houston, and he was great last year. Something to keep an eye on there would be Nick Chubb as a good shout out with some value for comeback player of the year. And he's a beloved player, right? Like, he would absolutely be in the voters' minds if he can have a 1,000-yard season and look pretty good there in Houston for a playoff team. So there are your awards. Now, I'm going to go pretty quickly through the playoff predictions here because, breaking down all of these theoretical one-on-one matchups here in the beginning of September is kind of meaningless. When the actual playoffs happen, I will get into more individual matchup analysis, but I will show you my full playoff outline here so you can see the kind of Final Four and who beats who and all that stuff. But really all I'm going to talk about here are the Final Four and the Super Bowl. So in the NFC, I have your top 2 teams, the Eagles and the Lions, making it. I know it's chalk. Again, I'm just trying to be as accurate as I can here and not be wrong. And if you put a gun to my head and said, give me your playoff predictions, this is what I got to go with. I will have some more hot take predictions here in just a few minutes. But I have the Eagles rolling through the NFC, just such a stacked roster. Unless they get hurt, that's really the only thing I could see forcing me off saying, yeah, they're the best team. They're going to go to the Super Bowl. So I've got the Eagles representing the NFC, and then I do have the Ravens representing the AFC. And you do see me at least with some bit of a stronger opinion there with the Denver Broncos actually defeating the Kansas City Chiefs in that round one matchup. I do think Denver has built that team really well to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that defense can really get to Mahomes. Mahomes has actually really struggled against someone like Nick Bonito, who is a unique counter to the deep drops that Patrick Mahomes makes, and it gets Mahomes to play flustered. I think Chiefs fans and Broncos fans that have watched that matchup know exactly what I'm talking about there. And I think this offense with Sean Payton scheming up some better playmakers this year against a familiar Steve Spagnuolo defense can do just enough to edge out the Chiefs there. So that does kind of throw a wrinkle in the AFC playoff picture. I don't have Denver going any further than that. I have Buffalo, who did get the bye there, advancing to the AFC Championship. But I have Baltimore rolling their way there as well. And this is where finally one of these teams is at least going to go to the Super Bowl. These two teams seems to blow it as soon as they get an opportunity to go there. So they can't both blow it, right? This game can't go on forever. You might see like 6 fumbles in overtime or something crazy, but eventually something's got to give. I'm going to lean with who I think is the more overall talented team in the Baltimore Ravens, even if this game is in Buffalo. So we have an Eagles-Ravens Super Bowl matchup, and the winner I'm going to pick there is going to be the Baltimore Ravens going against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that is a defense that could actually slow down the run-oriented offense of the Philadelphia Eagles, force Jalen Hurts to beat them with his arm. And if that's the case, I just don't know that he can put up just enough to match Lamar Jackson in this offense and Derrick Henry in this run game in that matchup. So I like the Baltimore Ravens this year as my pick to be your Super Bowl 60 champions. Ravens fans, there's your reward, I guess, for having to wait for your deep dive that will be out here very soon, I do promise. But like I said, I understand a lot of these predictions have been pretty chalk. I've tried to put some of my stronger opinions baked into these so far, but I did want to at least kind of lay it out there with some more hot takes, some of the things that I'm not necessarily gonna predict do happen, but maybe these are some of the more likely surprises that we could see. So we got a few opinions here. Number one is the Carolina Panthers really figuring things out, getting Derek Brown and some other additions for that defense, just being okay on that side of the ball. And this offense just humming. Bryce Young emerging as like a top 10 quarterback, T-Mac, Tet McMillan being sensational. That offensive line, that run game, and the Panthers really breaking through and threatening to win the division and being a playoff team there. Beyond that, Arizona Cardinals, also a candidate to be a surprise team this year. I already predicted them to go 9-8, but this is the hot take edition where they go even a step further than that, get that 7 seed in the wild card. And really, it would be Kyler plays well, but the defense does take that big step forward. I don't think a lot of people are predicting the Cardinals to make the playoffs, so I think that is enough to count as a hot take. And the other part of that is this is the Matthew Stafford gets hurt version of the Rams, which would definitely be the benefit to the Arizona Cardinals who play them twice. But if Stafford does get banged up, I think that's more of what the Rams season looks like. I think Jimmy Garoppolo can still play well and that team is competitive, but the Rams would be falling out of the playoffs here in my hot take scenario, as are the Bears. Losing out in some form of wild card, of tiebreaker scenarios there. And then in the AFC, how about taking it a step further, saying that the Denver Broncos do actually win the AFC West. The Kansas City Chiefs struggle a little bit more this year. Their close game luck regresses back to the mean. And the Denver Broncos really just roll and continue to build off of what they did last year, have the best defense in the league, and play well offensively. I don't think this one is crazy. Then in the AFC South, I will stand by backing the Colts a little bit here. And this is the hot take that Daniel Jones just kind of plays pretty well, that this at least resembles the Geno Smiths and Sam Darnold's and Baker Mayfield reemergences. Not quite to the same degree. I don't think Daniel Jones is as talented as those players are, but in the scenario where Jones plays pretty well, plays point guard for this offense that I do think is perfectly built for his skill set, and realistically, the Colts defense really surprising here with Lou Anarumo making his return as one of the premium defensive minds in the league in a new setting here in Indianapolis. And then this last one, I debated even including it because I hope this does not happen, but let's say Tua gets hurt again and you have to go to Zach Wilson in Miami. This isn't so much a prediction about the results for the Miami Dolphins. I have a hot take that Zach Wilson could be one of those Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield reemergence types of players in this Miami Dolphins offense if he does get that opportunity, unfortunately at Tua's expense. But that is something that's been in the back of my mind as a hot take that I at least wanted to include here in the predictions, and that Zach Wilson enters the 2026 season with some excitement as the Dolphins starting quarterback. And then to get a little bit more hot with my playoff predictions here, how about the Panthers continuing their Cinderella season and taking down a Niners team that maybe would be a little bit more banged up later in the season? That might be a little bit of a hot, spicy take there. And then if I'm picking kind of surprise teams out of the playoffs, not teams that, again, I'll stick with the very graphic analogy where you put a gun to my head and say, who goes to the Super Bowl? Who wins the Super Bowl this year? Yeah, my picks were Ravens and Eagles. Like, I'm not going to get too crazy if I'm trying to be right here. But if I'm able to be a little bit more creative and have a little bit more fun in terms of where some of these surprises might happen, I do have the Green Bay Packers out of the NFC. And yeah, I'm a Packers fan. I get it. But I've seen this pick a lot. A lot of people are picking the Packers to go this far. I don't think it's crazy with the Micah Parsons addition. You need Jordan Love to take that step forward that we've been kind of waiting for after a bit of a wasted season last year. But if that happens and the defense plays as well as they might now with Micah Parsons, absolutely the Packers should be in the mix. And that's being reflected in the gambling markets too. They are currently the favorites to win the NFC North and are sixth in Super Bowl odds right now. So it certainly is not just me. But then out of the AFC, this is kind of my one team that if there's a hidden value from a Super Bowl winning perspective on the gambling market, I like the Houston Texans as the bet to make there. 25-1 odds to win the Super Bowl. I think this could be the best defense in the league, and they frankly played like on par basically with what the Eagles were doing on the NFC side of things. They gave Justin Herbert and the Chargers hell. Obviously, they won that game with their defense, and then they put frickin' Patrick Mahomes in a blender in that game too, and their special teams let them down. They very realistically could have beaten the Chiefs in the playoffs if not for their special teams. This defense should be even better, and as long as they can just figure out the offensive line and use the scheme to help protect them a little bit, kind of like they did in the first year with CJ Stroud, I think Stroud heading into year 3 is poised to take a step forward from how he played last year. You've got Nico Collins. Like, I love this team as a Super Bowl sleeper, so I had to get that into my predictions somewhere. And then this would be a hell of a game. Packers-Texans, the CJ Stroud, Jordan Love era and rivalry, maybe kicking things up. These two guys kind of broke out in the same year. Would be a really fun matchup. A couple of great pass rushes going at it. I'd give the nod to the Packers in this scenario, but would be a hell of a game and would love to see either of these teams pull through as a surprise Super Bowl winner this year. Okay, last order of business before we get out of here. I owe this one to Patreon gang out there, but this is going to kind of double as a promotion for my Patreon. So I do weekly Vegas picks on my Patreon every single week. That is in the MVP tier. But because I'm running out of time and need to get the Ravens deep dive done, I don't know for sure when I'm going to publish those picks, certainly not before tonight's kickoff. So I'm going to give my picks here for the Cowboys-Eagles game and the Chiefs-Chargers games here. And it's a little teaser for you guys. If you enjoy this segment, you want to get access to it for every game, every week, you can go over to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. Support my channel and sign up there. But yeah, Dallas out Philadelphia. Philly obviously going to be heavy favorites in this game, I think, as they should be. They're going to roll the banners. The crowd's going to be humming. And Dallas is kind of stumbling into this game, having traded Micah Parsons. I think Philly, as a double, a two-score favorite, makes a lot of sense. But I do think there's going to be a lot of points in this game. I think Philadelphia alone is going to put up a fair share of points. I think Philly alone, with their run game against this Dallas team that, yes, they added Kenny Clark, but within a week, is that going to fix their run defense that's been bad for 2 years? I guess we'll find out tonight. But I do think Philly scores, and I think Dallas's offense, kind of like we said earlier, is underrated. So I like getting the over of 47.5 points. And Philly is, they have a lot of moving pieces with the defense. So there's a chance that they're not quite ready to hit the ground humming week one here against, Dak and this offense that, stylistically speaking, he should play well against a Vic Fangio defense that's going to play a lot more of those quarters two-shell coverages. I think Dak can have some success through the air in this game and at least keep this game interesting tonight. But I'm going to go with the Eagles winning this one 28-24 as a high-confidence pick, but I like betting a unit on the over there of 47.5. Then we have Kansas City versus the Chargers in Brazil. I mean, I'm surprised by this spread. Kansas City just 3-point favorites against the Chargers, playing without Rashawn Slater there. I don't know. As you can tell from my predictions, I'm just not overly stoked about the Chargers. I'm not that worried about Rashee Rice not being out there for the Chiefs. I still think they have plenty of guys to throw to. I don't think the Chargers have the pass rushers to really take advantage of the Chiefs' offensive line. Question marks with guys like Suamataia at left guard, especially. You're going to see Josh Simmons against Khalil Mack. That'll be a ton of fun to watch. But I don't really see that as where the weaknesses lie with the Chiefs. I wish the Chargers had a better interior pass rush and vice versa. We've seen Chris Jones wreck these Chargers. So I'm going to go with the Chiefs to win this one. Not to blow them out or anything, but to cover that field goal spread. If that climbed to 3.5, I would stay away. But get it while you can right now at just 3 points. Could see the Chiefs winning this one by 4 points or even by a field goal and you get your money back. But we're going to go Chiefs 24-20 with a unit on bet the spread there. So Patreon, I will have the rest of these at some point before kickoff on Sunday, hopefully Saturday noonish, depending how quickly I can get that Ravens deep dive done. But there are your full slate NFL predictions, gun to my head predictions, some hot takes. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you enjoy football tonight. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Peace out.